Thank you for coming. First of all, Marge, Jay, thank you for hosting. You guys are incredibly generous to open up your home. You guys are so sweet. And we get to meet you guys who are neighbors on the street and everybody, but that's amazing. Thank you very much. It's a beautiful day today. I know you'd rather be outside than listening to me.
No.
No? Oh, come on.
It's on the top of our list.
Oh boy. I don't know if that's pressure or that's a good thing, but anyways.
Good thing.
So, I don't know how many of, some of you probably know me. We've met on social occasions. That's my wife, Rashi. Partner for a long time. I know if I say the number, she'll say that's wrong. But 38 years.
Oh, good you remembered. I was thinking maybe you'll say the wrong number, but you said the correct number.
I rehearsed and rehearsed again.
You're a kid.
38 years, partners, we worked together, then we met, we kind of liked each other, and here we are. 2 kids, my son is 38.
37.
30, oh.
We married 38 years, our son is 37, our daughter is 32. Okay, I'll just tell you the numbers.
My son, so son 38, lives in San Francisco Bay Area.
You're not running for treasurer, are you?
It's not good numbers. It's not good numbers.
It's a tech guy, not a...
So 38, 32, she lives in New York, Manhattan. My son and his wife, they have grandkids, 3 grandkids, 4.5 years old, and 2 twins, boys, 8 months. So they were born on February 19th of this year. So as soon as we heard, we went and we, stayed with them. Came back, we had a fill of the twins and the babies and the infants and back. But we'll go back periodically for birthdays and celebrations. But you're back. Good to be back in Valencia Trails. And we moved in early this year. January we'll finish 1. I think I've mentioned this to some of you. And we bought into Valencia Trails for a couple of reasons. Our journey from California, as I mentioned, took us, besides all the homework of which place to go to as we were planning our my retirement and her retirement, we decided that we will actually move to a place which, weather-wise, it's not the same, but I really didn't want to be back in cold and snow. And the other criteria was, if I can find a paradise, the paradise should have no taxes, state taxes. So guess what meets the bill? Florida. So Florida was a natural destination, so we came house hunting. I don't know why, early on in our search, somebody said, oh no, you really don't want to go down to the West Coast because it's hurricanes and you get slammed with hurricanes and blah, blah, blah. So we actually made home in Boca Raton, so we landed on the East Coast. And we lived there for a couple of years, and then we lived in an all-age community. And then we realized that wasn't exactly the right fit for us. So we then started searching for paradise again. And as we searched, we looked at a lot of 55 plus communities and we landed on Valencia Trails. I say the word paradise because it's kind of a central theme of why this place is so important to me, because there was a team last night at Bocce which had a t-shirt that said Bocce in Paradise. And that's Valencia Trails for me, You drive into Valencia Trails and you see the beauty, you see the lush beauty down Majestic Trails. Now, obviously done for marketing reasons, but that's what we want as a community. Whoever runs and manages the communities to maintain the natural beauty of this place that it has to offer. So what attracts people is the natural beauty, and what makes it better are all the amenities and everything else that we built around it. So come to this place, you see the natural beauty in the landscaping and all the work. Then you drive into the amenity center, you see pickleball courts, tennis courts, bocce courts, a beautiful clubhouse, and a dog park. I have to tell you, a lot of places don't have dog park. So not that we have dogs, but to me, from a purely numbers perspective, I know it's a big sell for someone looking to look at this place from a value perspective, dog parks are great. Go to the restaurant, go to the amenities. Again, we go. GL is amazing. They hand out coupons, for you to have lunch together, and they always make sure you come on a Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. And I think we came here on a Thursday, and we had a beautiful lunch, thanks to GL, and it was amazing. We said, "Wow, this lunch place, the community restaurant was great." Then you go to the poolside, you sit down and have a drink. We met a lot of people there who were already residents, probably for a couple of years, who all seemed to say the same thing: "Wow, we love this place." So to me, that was a validation that why Valencia Trails was the most attractive place in this area. So for me, when we settled, we decided to put our money down, and the next 12 months waiting for GL to finish construction, all that fun stuff with GL. I won't bore you, it doesn't relate to the position, but we went through that circle. But we have been through that process in Boca, so we know what entails the work with GL to get your house in proper condition.
Were you in a GL home in Boca?
Yes. So I don't know, we were probably a little bit of luck, but actually I have to say GL did good on both places for us. We were quite pleased with the construction, the number of defects. We had a little more defects in Boca because it was built right during COVID. This one was not in COVID, so it was much better. So overall, very good. A little bit about so that's brought me here to Valencia Trails. I think we saw up and down both coasts, right up towards north of Tampa, on the Palm Beach County and above. And I think the best place to live was here, Naples. And not just Valencia Trails, but also all the neighborhoods. We actually got the last lot GL had available. Somebody decided to withdraw, and the sales guy said, "Hey, somebody pulled out, do you want it?" And we
That's
came.
what they told me. Isn't that what they told me?
I'm sure.
It's a good sales guy.
Yeah, it was the last lot in that collection. So we actually were looking for, in that coastal collection, we have a Sunrise model. So it was kind of a perfect fit. We came, saw the lot, she loved the lot, she said, "Let's do it," and here we are. A little bit about myself. I know it's all in the resume, so I'll kind of touch on a few things. I graduated and studied in India, started working in India, and the company I used to work for in India was a global logistics company called APL. And those who worked on the ocean side have seen those huge giant ships that carry containers and bring them to US. We were the largest, from a size and revenue perspective, the largest global shipping and logistics company in the world. And we operated in 97 countries. At some point in my career, I became responsible for the IT division of that company. And I was the head of that IT division with about 600 people, over $200 million in budget. So pretty sizable, substantial scope. Teams across in 5 countries across the world. So it was pretty big responsibility, but you're also managing a sizable chunk of business for a $28 billion company. So it was a big responsibility. But I started my career there, worked for many years in sales and marketing. And for me, sales and marketing is where I actually became from an introvert to someone who could stand up and talk. It was actually a good break for me because, my dad wanted me to go in a certain line. Like all Indians, they lined up to be doctors or engineers. That's a stereotype. But I went into sales and marketing. Completely different topic over beer, drink, whatever. My dad wasn't happy, but that's okay. Because it helped me reestablish who I wanted to be and what I wanted to be. And I think it really helped me grow from just being purely focused on the operations of technology to take on more management roles and eventually lead up to where in my last role before retirement, I was actually hired by a private equity company to run a portfolio company. Came in when it was a small business, $67 million, grew it through acquisitions and organic growth to $200 million. And that's when the private equity company decided to do an exit. And I timed my exit right after the acquisition finished. We did the integration. and I decided to leave. That was a pretty sizable project. We acquired a sizable company to complement our It was the wine logistics business. I was in the wine industry for 6 years. I can tell you everything about you want to know about wine. Drank some of the best wines out of California, Oregon, and Washington. Great companies, and these wineries were built on success of doing distribution direct to consumer. So we were a direct to consumer company. So $30 million about 30 million bottles of wine as inventory across 18 warehouses and doing distribution across the globe. And it was a pretty sizable and very challenging job. But there's one message for me as some skill sets I bring into this role that I learned as I grew through my career is what matters to everybody is not how good you are from a technical role. It's your ability to relate with customers, ability to relate with your employees. If your employees are not with you and your customers are not with you, you don't have a business to run. So that was a big message for me. Shareholders, vendor partners, all of that ecosystem is what makes you successful as a leader. And as I learned that through my successive years as I grew in an organization, it's the skill set I bring to the table because what's important in this role as a board member is trying to build cohesion. Yes, specifically, unlike a corporation where you as a CEO, you can assemble a team of people who are focused on a vision, mission. In a HOA setting, you want board members who have very diverse thinking. You want people who bring together different points of view and different perspectives. And through that, you have to coalesce your ideas to drive what the community wants. The number one focus is not my fellow board members. The number one is not the property management company. The number one focus for me as a board member is going to be you. It's your voice that I want to hear and be able to translate that back as action. Not everything will get done, I'm sure. There will be feedback, some things, some people will be happy with some outcomes, some may not. But what's most important to most people is what we want to take and get the board to accomplish. So that's an important task. I believe I tried to bring that philosophy into the committee work that I was doing alongside with Dave Dickey's here, a fellow member from my Access Control Committee. Thank you, Dave.
Oh, thank you.
And we worked together on a lot of different topics. We had 3 different people with different backgrounds and perspectives. We would talk through it and then figure out what our right strategy was. Took that same thinking and logic into a slightly different setting in amenities. And we had 3 very diverse perspectives there, Louis, Sarah, and myself. I know all 3 are running for the board. So we brought different points of view into that dialogue. And I think, again, if you sat in any amenities meeting, you will realize that the dialogue and discussion we brought in each meeting. Amenities meeting, I don't know, maybe access control wasn't a very sexy subject, but amenities meeting made a lot of people play pickleball, a lot of you play tennis, a lot of you play bocce, and you're in those meetings to talk about your point of view. And those, if you notice, you'll see the robustness of the dialogue and discussion. We had the same discussion whether the number of members listening to us was 5 or 30, like in a large committee meeting. So dialogue was very important to me, discussion was very important, and then sometimes we would just not agree on things. And so we would table it for the next meeting. So again, come back with the different points of view and work the discussion till such time we get agreement. There are some issues and topics that are straightforward. It's a no-brainer. You move on. But some issues will definitely require dialogue and discussion. So to me, one of the things for my platform as I run on this board is, for me, I want to make Valencia Trails make a positive impact. And for me, positive impact has a lot of connotations. One is, I want this place where as I already talked about the lushness and we have to maintain our landscaping, or if not, invest in it so that it becomes better. The best way to measure success, I mentioned this in my last meet and greet. measurement and getting data back from people is very important for me. So the best way to measure success for Valencia Trails is surveys. How satisfied are you with XYZ? Could be services, it could be products, it could be, I would love to see a survey when I get on the board. How satisfied are you with what actions the board is taking? So get a survey out so we're able to get feedback from you, and then we measure ourselves against those benchmarks. I want to see just not surveys, but I also want to see us put in place contracts with measurements so that we can actually govern each of our vendors so that there's metrics in them. There's a lot of great work that's been done so far with the existing board, and I want to be very clear. I said that last time in the meet and greet. Dave and Peter were in the room together. This board has accomplished a lot. I'm not here to bash, I'm here to say we not only have to carry that torch forward, we need to grow that to the next level. So phase 1 done, let's go to phase 2 and we'll go on phase 3. Each successive board, you want that board to continue to enhance what the previous one did. Not to go back and, I'm not here to trash or go back and rehash what something is doing, unless there's something wrong. But other than that, generally I want to move forward. Forward looking is where I do well and I do best. So for me, Marianne, Dave, and Peter have done a tremendous job. I've acknowledged that, and I've said again and again that their contributions to taking that initial board, the first board or whatever it's called legally, they have a difficult task because they're helping with the transition from GL. And that transition task a lot of times takes up a lot of energy. On my previous community, I worked in that transition role, and believe me, it was not easy. It was a lot of stuff. GL leaves behind tons of, and GL is a corporation. As much as they want things to help you to do it, they don't have incentive. Why would they want to spend money? So you have to literally show them a list of defects, get it on the list, negotiate with them, and finally get a good impact on it. So I think the board has reached a point with the EPIC study, with the work done through that engineering report. Next step is negotiation with GL, and hopefully the next board will pick up the ball on that and start to complete that exercise. That's very important. Going back to making a positive impact. To me, I know it sounds cliche, but I want to make VT a fun place. I mean, again, when I go around pickleball, tennis, and bocce last night, I saw the vibe. We have to continue to enhance that vibe. Is how do you create events? How do you create amenities? I'd love to see all our amenities treated well. I was a little surprised, when we saw issues with tennis courts 1 through 4 with nails in them. It's work to be done. We've got to maintain these facilities that was put in place, and there's money being paid to maintain them. They need to be maintained correctly. Bocce courts had little potholes in the corners. Obviously, it's sinking. And if continuing to put that hot true material is not working, then there's underlying subsoil issues that need to be addressed, and that is something we have to take a look at. So hopefully the EPIC report has picked up on that, because if they see evidence of sinking, they know that there's a subsoil issue which has to be addressed. So, for me, making this place, and then lastly, governance. We can make a positive impact, we can look for making this a fun place, but you have to govern so you take that fiduciary responsibility seriously, you drive change. None of us want to see a dramatic increase in our HOA fees, but neither do we want to be so penny-wise, pound-foolish that we don't invest in this community. So there's a fine balance, and what that fine balance looks like is something we have to work through. So I'm going to open it up for questions. I probably spoke too much, but yeah,
Have
hopefully.
you been on boards before?
I have been in California in HOA boards for a community, 300 plus homes, 300 homes, but large estate homes, high value homes actually. So, but similar. But in Boca, similar to here, I was on the transition committee, and then I worked on the safety/access control committee there as the committee chair. here, when I came to Valencia Trails, and I was actually on the initial transition committee between the GL board and this, where, you know, worked alongside Jim Heffernan and the GL team on identifying. I was the chair of the risk committee, so identifying the risks and numbers, insurance, all of that stuff. And John Solari and I worked on those things together. So I don't know if you know John, but yeah. So we worked together on that. So goal is to drive change. I've studied and kind of as much as possible absorbed a lot of the nuances of Florida statute, because California is not the same as Florida. Florida statute is a little different. So understanding the nuances of where Florida is differ. But from a management perspective, I think our community, it's the same. There are people, there's property managers, there are vendors, and you've got to figure out how best to manage it. And how do you get the best out of them, and how do you make sure that they're delivering value to you as a community. So while holding a tight leash on their operations and their processes, yet making sure they are designed and set up for succeeding in this community, I think is key.
Do you know who the candidates will be at this point? You know, I heard Mark pulled out.
So as of now, I know there are 8 candidates, unless something's changed. But I believe the 8 candidates are the 2 existing board members, Marian and Dave. And then there is Jeff Weiss, there is Pat Rowe, Troy Crawford, Louis Rose, myself, and Sarah.
Okay. Mark's pulled out. And do you know when we will get everyone's resume? I guess.
Most of them are already out there.
They should have been.
They're online on Team Reach, pretty much.
Okay.
I think everybody's is.
I think he's asking for officially. It's coming
Yeah,
tomorrow.
I think
I think it's coming tomorrow.
Yeah, I think it's coming in shortly. I don't know if it's tomorrow, but
17th, they said 17th. It has to be 1 month before, so because 17th of November is the election, it has to come out by tomorrow, 17th of June.
So yeah, 30 days prior to the election date, there's a mandatory requirement on the statute to send out what's called a second notice. And along with the second notice, which has to be mailed and emailed, they'll be mailing out all the candidate resumes, mailing out as well as emailing and putting it out. So you'll receive it by mail and by email. Hopefully by midday tomorrow, unless, you know, systems break down or cyber attacks, I don't know. But generally it should come out tomorrow.
And Dave and I have been asking for a large forum where all the candidates.
Everybody's
have
been
a
asking
chance.
for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Do you know if that's been?
I've asked and they're working on it. And I believe, unless Dave has better information, but I believe their target is for the second notice to go out, leave about 7 days for everybody to have received the notice. And then they will set up a date. So I'm thinking of first week of November is when they will probably find a date. There is going to be another board meeting, which I think is on October 27th. And so, which means this candidate meeting will be after that. So it'll be the week after.
And the other thing we've asked for, which I think they're considering, is that it's moderated by an icon person. So it's not just a free-for-all, it's not just one person talking, those set up
That we
set up
definitely
some
need
rules
that.
and regulations.
Have
Yeah, I
set
hate
up
to use it.
questions.
Yeah, the analogy of a presidential debate, but it'd be something a little more organized as
Yep.
opposed to just people getting up and speaking. Can I make a comment and ask a question?
Yes, please.
So first, my comment is, Ravi, I've had the honor of working with you for 7 or 8 months. You bring not only knowledge of all the statutes, which is something I've never had experience with. You've been a tremendous resource. But as a leader and as a person, you have integrity, you're open, you're straightforward, you talk from your heart, you talk from your head, and you listen. And I think those are all attributes that when I think about a leader and I think about someone I'd like to see on the board, those are qualities that I think, and values that I think it would be important to have. So, we're applauding him, not me. My question is kind of parlaying on that. If you were to think about creating an all-star team on the board, recognizing that you have
Good question.
two existing board members and you have other people with different experiences. I'm not talking about personalities here, I'm thinking about the types of people that you would like to see. Can you speak to that, what you would be hopeful? Yeah, and just let me make one other comment. You're almost a hybrid, because even though you've not been a board member, your experience, you're on a couple of committees, you worked on the transition, you have intimate knowledge of how things were set up that a lot of people just don't have. And I think that is, again, not that you've been on the board for the first phase, you bring a lot of experience that has been allied to that.
Thank you. That's a great question. I know that, during my waking moment, I try to think of who I would work with best, and I keep drawing my little matrix and where the pairings are. I think to me, we now have, my first opportunity to meet Mark was last week when Jeff and he were together at someone's house.
I was with you.
You were there with me. And it's unfortunate, I know he's making a personal decision to move north when he's going back home. But with now 8 candidates, I've seen the strengths of each of those candidates. They all bring a lot to the table. Continuity is a big thing for me, which means if there is, having somebody on the board who's had a prior experience in phase 1, that's always helpful. But I also see value in having very different perspectives is also a good thing. So I'm trying to be, my goal is I'm not trying to walk a fence here, but the ideal team for me is there are people with solid experiences, and I think when you judge each one, there's some natural choices that you will all have, which is, I think Dave touched on a few of those qualities, which are understanding Florida statute, understanding the nuances of this community, having a very broad perspective of all the things that this community, if someone is just focused on a particular amenity like a pickleball or a club or a gather, then you're very narrow-minded, which means you don't have understanding of what landscaping means and what it needs to be. So having that broad experience and assembling a team around you, for me, what's important is as a board, when we first get set, one of the very first tasks after the special election and the announcement and all that fun stuff is over is to go back and set up committees. I think one of the things that this board did right was set up the committees right away. But we don't want to disband the committees. We want to get them started literally within 2 weeks of formation, ideally. And maybe add a few more committees, because I think committees add a lot of value. The board strength is only 5. And there's a board president, vice president, treasurer, and secretary. All of these roles already have, if you read the statute and our bylaws, have a set of duties that have been assigned to them, which they have to perform under the Florida statute. So which means they already have a fair amount of, so which means if they have to do that and enjoy their life here in the paradise, that's a lot from them. And you only have 1 member at large, which means the team size of 5 is a little tight. It's not impossible. Team of 3 did a great job. Team of 5 should do even a better job. But my point is, you need committees to be supplementing the board to get all the work done. So I strongly think there's a very strong, formidable team of candidates. I'm hoping I can win your vote, and I'm hoping I'll be on the board, but at the end of the day, the community will pick the 5 strongest, that is there, of that slate of 8.
There's another attribute you have that Dave forgot, and that's you're here year-round,
Yes.
pretty much.
I am here 12 months, except when I have to go see grandkids. But with that exception, I'm here 12 months. I'm not a snowbird.
But it's good virtually. Very good virtually.
I am. And Dave knows. I love virtual meetings when I can. So when I was in California, we would be on Zoom, So, but yeah, but again, to do the work you want on the board, you have to be as much present as possible, and hopefully, we all take a little bit of turns to go home on vacations. I do want my vacation, I do want grandkids time, so all of that put together. But other than that, can I go to her and then? Sorry. Are you ready?
Yes.
Sorry.
So, I think people are resistant to change, and I think that, and you probably know that, and I'm not saying board members, but there were a lot of changes made. Going to Icon and some of the different vendors changed and people changed. And maybe you can't speak to that, but I think, going forward, how do you communicate better to those of us? I'll have to admit, we didn't go to the board members, but I think that the majority of, the residents here don't go to the board member or to the board meetings. So how do you, what would you do different, as if you're, elected to the board?
So I think, first of all, if I go back and look through all the changes that were initiated and done, the switch from GRS to ICON, I think there were a lot of circumstances that required that change to happen. So to me, I think only time will tell. I can't say for certain because ICON's credentials are very, very strong and their parent company, Troon, even better. They bring to the table a ton of experience that this community definitely needs. Somebody framed it to me the other day that we are almost like a country club without golf. And if you think of it and you frame this community in that context, I grew up in the IT tech world, so I led a couple of startups before I went into different jobs. But in a startup world, you have to define a product. And if I think of VT as a product, and you frame it in the context of a country club minus the golf, I think that's a very powerful way of framing what we have. Because it directly lends itself to things and property values, and not that we all want to sell, I don't want anyone to sell, hopefully we all stay here as long as we can. But the goal is you want to have this property. I want people to think of Valencia Trails as a home, as a destination when they see houses come up, and they should be gone in a couple of days and not weeks, months. So from a value perspective, I see Valencia Trails and continue to maintain our benchmark against property values as high. So back to your question, I think there was a lot of things done. Now, what would I do different? I think each decision that was made, my biggest strength is communication. I would love to bring in early in the stage. I might have had, if the board had supported me, walk through the decision of why we went from GRS, not without giving away all the necessary contractual / reasons, because some of them are confidential between HOA as an entity and the vendor, but clearly go on through a presentation of why we picked ICON, the strengths. What do we think are the requirements for this community to have a particular set of skills? So what's the company? So we had an RFP. So what are the requirements in that RFP, and how did ICON perform against them, and who are the other 2 or 3 companies that were looked at? Making that transparent, so each one of us can say, oh wow, that's the best decision. So we're not relying on, our own research, and because people have had experiences with ICON. I've seen posts where I've not lived in an ICON community. People have said negative things, people have said positive things, but hopefully time will tell. But what it tells me is when I see all those negative comments I saw on Facebook about ICON, it tells me that if I'm elected to the board, those are the first things I'll be watching for as issues. And I will address it right with ICON management as we start, and say, hey, this is what the community is telling us about you. And if I see signs of that trouble, I would want to address it and nip it in the bud before it escalates into an issue where we're all like, oh my God, this is terrible. So I think the board has done a lot of great things, and I say it again and again only because it's important to understand the work is not easy. Sometimes I think they may have taken on too much. There was a lot of change, and we could have probably scaled back. Some change could have been probably adjusted in terms of timeline. The community I came from in Boca, we knew that GRS was not a good fit. but we chose not to address it in year one because it was not easy. It would have been turmoil. So we pushed that decision out till we fixed all the other issues that we had in front of us. So it's all a matter of timing. No two communities are the same, so you have to look at what's unique to us. So I'm sure Marianne, Dave, and Peter, when they looked at the set of circumstances, they made a decision based on what they saw and what was important to them. So, I don't want to second guess their decision process because I don't have the facts in front of me. I'm fact driven, which means I look for data, and I love Facebook and all the comments, but that's not my source. So I would love to see a set of facts in front of when I get into the office and see what's in front of me. Sorry, yes, go ahead. You had a question?
Karen.
Yeah, go ahead. No, now I forgot, so. I'm one of those.
Okay, so you have 5 members on the board, and 5 people means 5 different personalities, and that's a fact, okay? So the success of any board depends on how well these 5 people can get along and work with each other. Without dwelling on any detail, I didn't think that was what happened with the previous board. But how are you going to ensure that these 5 members work together and work in a way in which no one person has more jurisdiction or authority than another person? Because that's when conflict arises and you get issues.
Great question. I think that's under the statute there are roles and there are specific fiduciary duties attached to each role. However, when it comes to making a significant decision for a community, the statute is very clear. All 5 or 4 or 3 board members, 3 or 5, have to work through a process to come to an agreement. That process requires a robust discussion, whatever that topic is, and then coalesce their thoughts. Is it possible that 2 or 3 don't agree? Yeah, round 1, you might have 5 diverse opinions. And I think for me, having gone through this in my jobs and my careers, having inherited teams or built teams, you build the best and most successful company is not putting 5 like-minded people on the top. It's having people with very diverse perspectives. And that diverse perspective is what drives the scale of and the value of the company, as well as how it makes it more effective. And that, I hope, and as I look at the 8 people, I already know that the 8 bring strengths and very different points of view. I have worked with Marianne, Dave, Troy, Louis, and Sarah in my various roles and capacities so far. And I'm not saying they should be or they are the candidates, but I'm saying I worked with them in my role as an Access Committee Chair, as an amenity community member. I worked with them very closely. So as to Dave's point, I have a very good understanding of their styles of working and what makes it successful. I've had good success in getting a few proposals through, on either side. And some of it has not been easy. We've had some tough dialogue, discussions. You would have thought, trying to get a survey out was the easiest thing since sliced bread, but it wasn't. Dave was smiling. We had some diverse opinions of what should be in the survey, what cannot be in the survey, what should be happening. But we coalesced a lot of different opinions and finally went out with the survey. We argued for ad nauseum on the tool to use for the survey. It's like, oh, well, just use whatever tools we have, but no. It was very important for us to pick the right tool. And I bring that up because it highlights the conversation that had to take place, because a survey is no good if it's not anonymous. The responses are not anonymous. Survey is no good if it forces you to finish it in one sitting. A survey is no good if it only limits you to 10 questions. And a survey is no good if it only can go to 50 respondents. And that was some of the tools that our previous HOA company was pushing on us. So going through that dialogue, working with Mary Ann to come to a choice was a big, big step. So I think that for us, Dave and I remember this conversation. We had me sitting in Danville and on the phone and trying to get everybody on the same page. And then finally we got the survey out. And I hope you all responded to the survey.
So that was my question. On the access control survey, I don't know if you've seen the results, and I don't know if you can speak to that right now, but regardless, I'm curious what you think the access control and security, what could be improved there?
So I have not seen the results. I know there were a total of 595 respondents.
Wow, that's pretty big.
That is superb.
That is
Really
fabulous.
big.
And there were 1488 emails that went out. So 1488 is the GRS had on its record 1488 emails because we allowed every household, who was an adult, who's registered with an email, they got a survey. So 595 was a great response. Mathematically 42%. So which means now the data that will come. I'm trying to work with ICON a little bit now. And I have to, this is where I could have been breathing down their neck, but I also know this is Mary's first week, second week, and she's got tons of issues. I mean, she just showed me her mailbox with emails that are, some of them high priority, and in the grand scheme of things, am I gonna say, no, drop all that and get my survey results? No. So, I'm gonna wait my opportunity, but the results are ready. It needs to be distilled. I need Dave and I and Don Drozian on the committee have to see the data. And as soon as we see it, we're gonna figure out how to present it back to the community. So whether how we do it or we ask the board to do it, I don't know the format because this is something we would want to do. We will obviously have a presentation. This is where I love town halls. We'll have a town hall, we'll present the data, and then we'll send out the data, actual raw data back to everybody. But from what I remember, what I was told is 595 responses, a lot of very meaningful questions were very thoughtfully designed, thanks to Dave and Don and the team. And we actually put together a lot of, questions that were important to us because they also lead into decisions we will make in the new board or even the current board based on the timing. Because we're certainly keen on understanding, importance of using technology to manage access control and our safety versus not using technology. And I'm really curious to see how the community views it because we actually heard anecdotal stories of people absolutely do not want to use apps or any technology to get in and out of the gates. They just want to drive up, say hi to the guard, show them a driver's license and drive it. And then there are people who say, oh no, that's too loose and easy, so we need kiosks, we need barcodes, we need that, and so you can go either way. But the survey will tell us exactly what we should be doing and how we should spend our money. But yeah, thank you for asking.
Question, going back to your original starting, how you started, you said you had kids and grandkids, in the country here that you'll take your time on vacation. You have family in India as well, I would assume.
Just my mom.
And do you spend any significant time in India at all?
In all these years, I've probably gone back I've been in this country close to 31 years. I probably go back to India every couple of 3 or 4 years. My dad passed earlier this year. So I went back to be with my mom, and I'll probably go back for a week or so next February.
Okay.
But to be with her to see how she's doing. She has family living close by who can help her through stuff, but that's my only India obligation. But that should not exceed what I would call my allocated time. Rashi and I want to spend 2 or 3 weeks on travel, vacation, kids, whatever. So broadly, if I would even expand that to 4 weeks, that's our time out of this place.
Sure.
Over a year, all done in bits and pieces.
Second question is, the board deals a lot with our own community within the sphere of GL homes. But there's also the outside influences that, is there a connection from a political standpoint? Like I know the state of Florida is now trying to institute a no property tax. Is there somebody, does the board take an active role in trying to send a representative to our government representatives for, you know, the aspect of seeing, of course, I don't even know what that bill is yet, we haven't seen that bill. But is there like a liaison between our community and the local government?
So the best example for what this board did was going to the planning commission with N Square. You know, the NC Square, the community that's coming up in Immokalee, exactly. And, you know, the goal was to ensure that the builder was, you know, I think our community along with Lisette who led that effort, they were able to get that planning commission to vote down and get the builder to change his requirements so that the height of the buildings from a line of sight perspective, the type of the ratio of housing that they were looking at, even though it was being built as a home for first responders, which is largely true, but they also had other provision in it. So I think trying to narrow down the scope and get it to be where it was acceptable to us as residents, as well as the builder, as well as the community, the logic was one. In my previous community, there were multiple interactions between the board and the local city council. So I think the biggest influence we have, there are two interactions. One is with the city council, the local council. The Palm Beach County School District would not send school buses inside the community. And as I said, we were all age. And that was a big issue for kids because the moms and dads had to drive the kids to the front of the gate and leave them there. There was not enough place for turning around. So it created all kinds of safety issues, not only for us as a resident, but for the community, but created traffic havoc. So long and short of it, unfortunately, the commissioner who was responsible for our district, she just didn't want to take an active role. She had other interests in mind. So long and short, our community literally had to lobby her with petitions and then get that. So we were very actively involved in that. And the second important was, for that same community, was also to do with the tax appraiser. She decided out of nowhere that she was on a parcel of land which is very close to the community. She wanted to build a DMV, state-of-the-art DMV facility. The problem was it was going to bring into the neighborhood vehicles and people that were not going to be acceptable. So essentially fight that. So they basically relocated the DMV to another parcel that was acceptable. So to your point, I think HOA will definitely get involved with the local council. I don't know whether it's in our mandate to work with the state level politics, but for sure having a on our access control committee, Don was a former New York City detective. He has a very close tie with the Collier County Sheriff's Office, and he actually attends their monthly session. So he is our eyes and ears into the CCSO's office, and he brings a lot of feedback. So for us as a committee as well as a board, we have people who are experts with these different governmental agencies and local councils that we want to tap into and get their expertise. So is it an important thing? Absolutely, because we need to keep our eyes, because we're not living in a vacuum. There are things happening around us that we would want to influence and make sure it's done to our liking. So yes, the answer is this board did it. The future boards, it'll be incumbent upon them to keep an eye on that activity. Yes.
The first battle that they took on was NC squared wanted to build apartment buildings in lieu of the permit they had.
Yeah.
And we blew that out of the water completely. And then that put them back at their original permit, which was building 100% low-income townhouses, affordable townhouses. And with the help of a couple commissioners, they were able to which the contractor said was not practical because of the cost of it. So he goes, we just would sell the land with the help of a couple of commissioners. They said, well, look at building 30% affordable, and the rest of it can be luxury townhouses, and that's what passed.
Correct. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Yes.
Okay, I want to go back to this topic of communication, okay? Because the community votes members to the board, it is important that members of the board communicate with residents who voted them in. And so if there is a change in the composition of the board, what is your thought on, should we be informed about it? Because that, I don't know, I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I have been traveling quite a bit. As of today, I haven't received any communication that tells me that the 3-member board that we voted in is now a 2-member board.
No,
And so my question is, how would you, if you're elected, ensure that there is communication to prevent any kind of backstories and misunderstanding and all of that? So that communication is very important, and I want to hear your take on how you're going to maintain that open communication.
So I think those very important. I let me put it this way. I don't want to go back, and I don't know all the facts, what precluded or didn't preclude, but we went from a 3-member board, 2-member board, 1 member resigned, and to me, and then at the last board meeting, they nominated an individual to fill the role between that date till November 17th. So essentially, Troy Crawford is the nominated director who will serve his term for 6 weeks. I fully agree that there should be, at each event, each occurrence of an event, there should be a communication, or some sort of a form of communication, or a forum that allows us, the board, to communicate. So for me, if such a thing were to happen, a board member were to resign for whatever reason, I believe the property management company should be asked to send out a message so everyone knows something happened, there's now a vacancy. And then there should be a communication from the property manager / the board that says, how do they intend to fill the vacancy? Or if they don't intend to fill, how will they continue to run the rest of the board? So all of those are important communication steps that need to happen. And I don't want to sit here and know that I have all the facts to know why certain things happened or didn't happen. I don't. And I don't want to second guess any of the decisions that are being made or were made. But I would just say, I give them the benefit of the doubt for now that, there must have been reasons why those communications didn't go out. But I will say, for me, communications are a must. I said this in my last meet and greet, and I know that there were a bunch of people from the legal profession in the room who were not, jokingly didn't like my reference to them. One of the things I learned when I took on a role of a CEO in a company was, I can be a deer in a headlight and listen to my lawyer and my CFO all day long, which means I get to do nothing. Because the first thing they'll tell you, if there's a problem inside a company and there's an issue with customer service or service issue, they'll say, don't say anything to the customers, because it can be a potential, they'll ask you, they'll file a claim, they'll want money back. So the lawyers almost want you not to have to communicate. Or if you communicate, they pick the words to make sure that it's not your liability. So I learned that the best way to go forward with some of these communications, if the company truly made a mistake, I have gone back in front of customers, one-on-one, groups of people, and said, I'm sorry, we messed up. And now we're going to make it right for you. And to me, making it right is an important step in acknowledging the issue and then making it right. But communication cannot be dictated by a set of being afraid that if I say something, somebody's going to take me and sue me for using the words I said. So those are not things I'm afraid of. I've learned, I've got scars on my back from that. And I will tell you that communication is a pillar for why I want to run in this. Make communication such a huge piece. And if, whatever be the structure of the board, whoever takes whatever roles, by God, I want to lead that communication forum on behalf of the board. Because I'll be in front of you regularly, trying to communicate, whether it's in writing, or it's in town halls, or it's in forums that are necessary. So there are some great ideas. I know our board meetings are very short. I came from a community where our board president, he would have a 45-minute agenda driven, old business, new business, finished, topics done, and then he would open it up. The room was in a sports court, 100 people in the room, and he literally would go every person and say, do you have a question, do you have a question? And we would be sitting in that sports court or gym area for close to 2.5 hours. So everybody in the room who was there had an opportunity to ask a question. It was painful. But everybody had 2 minutes, ask a question, quick response, and then move on. Ask a question, quick response, and move on. But people loved it because now there was so much of information that came out in those questions. And then the board was not afraid. They said, hey, I don't know the answer to that question or that issue. I'll take it. The property manager who was sitting there would make notes. And then next day, people would be a follow-up, and there would be an email saying, or to that individual, Pav, here's your question. I didn't get to answer you, but here's your response.
I was just picking up on your question about communication. One of the things I was happy to see when ICON did their introduction to us is they have a communication resource. So one, I'm not sure how we're going to connect with that, and two, it strikes me that we have some good committees, and I know some of the work that's been done. Wouldn't it make sense to have a communication
Yes,
committee?
absolutely, 100%.
Because and not just for formal board and town hall type meetings, but more informal, more, just how do you have things like what you talked about in the sports complex.
So for example, some of you may or may not have, I don't know, a show of hands, how many of you have actually installed and signed on to Alessand, the Valencia Trails app? Okay, half of you. It's actually not a bad tool. I'm not a big fan of it. It doesn't meet the Apple standards of user experience. It's got a little clumsy user experience and screens, pretty bad from that perspective. But it's got a lot of functionality. It was selected as the vehicle to bring this community together and create a single forum for communication. I want to see that app that has been purchased and installed. I want to continue to further and grow that tool. Make that the basis on which all emails and notifications are there. It's supposed to have group discussions, which means facilitated group discussions. I can start a thread. What do you think? We're going to go and remove all these trees and put these trees in. I'm just making up an example. Let people weigh in. Oh, I love this tree. No, I don't like this tree. Give me this, give me that. So you want to have these facilitated conversations that's being monitored and managed. And ICON is in the process of getting fully trained on the app. And hopefully very soon they'll start rolling out these features. And my goal is to facilitate and make that happen so that we have a single version of truth. So we're not relying on hearsay or for that matter on Facebook. Again, Facebook is a great tool. It actually gets communications out quickly. It gets our thoughts out quickly. But it's not the most secure platform. And we don't know who's on it. We have no way to vet it because it's not actually vetted. Alessand, on the other hand, is a fully vetted tool. You cannot be using Alessand if you're not on the HOA database. So it's
what
a very
are the big secrets there?
Sorry?
What are the big secrets that we are afraid that Facebook is not secured enough?
There not be any big secrets, but when you are also very careful, you want to make sure that you don't want to have people airing their dirty laundry on Facebook, which then somebody who's not interested, because I think there was one of the Facebook groups, there are realtors on it don't live here, and they see this stuff, and if they don't bring people to, your value of your property, let me take you to Quarry Lane, you know, that's a beautiful community, no hassles. This is a high drama place, you know, I don't want that reputation.
You see, the problem is we have now Team Reach, and Team Reach we have, I'm already signed up to, I don't think 15 or 16 groups, and now we have these two, and you know, there are only 24 hours a day, and you cannot read, I don't know how much, so many messages every day, and
Yeah,
it's just
absolutely.
getting crazy.
So I would hope that soon after the election is over, all those Team Reach sites suddenly shrink and go
Yeah.
away.
Please.
Because I think there's no reason to have such a large proliferation. Team Reach was a knee-jerk reaction to, you know, again, forget the board elections and candidates and have their own pages and stuff like that. Originally, the Team Reach was created because it needed to bring club members together,
Exactly.
right? But Alasan has that feature. So we want to see all the clubs that are in Team Reach migrated over to Alasan. So you do all your signups, you do all your everything on that particular app. So you're not using Team Reach. So I want to see Foods of the World, you know, Bridge Club, Bocce, all of those die down and move to Alasan quickly. But again, we're waiting for Icon to get fully trained, and then hopefully that process will start. But obviously, they're also waiting to see the elections and, you know, make sure that their eyes are on making sure the resources that are here in the office, Neri, Judy, Bell, and all the other people who are here, that they're focused on getting all the, you know, I's dotted, T's crossed to get the election to the, you know, so.
There's a good lack of communication. You realize, have you noticed how high the lawn is? So someone asked, why aren't the lawns being done this week? And the answer was, because they're weeding in the back this week, they'll get around to it next week. Well, that's gonna be 3 weeks. And by the time they do the lawns, there's gonna be big clumps of grass that's gonna come out of the mower. It's gonna be quite a mess. And then someone else says, my little dog can't even pee in the lawn because it's too tall for him to get in there.
I agree.
Kind of frustration.
So in my previous community, it was required in the weekly blast that goes out. We have on Fridays, there's an email that goes out from Icon before that GRS. The landscape company had to provide the mowing, trimming, weeding schedule. All of that had to be put, and it was published. Street by street, what were they gonna do on which week, you know? And then as the season changed, clearly during summer, things slow down for some things, and then ramp up for something else. So basically, they are constantly supposed to keep adjusting based on what's happening. So if your lawn is growing tall, and you know, you have to do that, you know, they have to increase the schedule. Occasionally, the equipment, they come here, the equipment breaks down, things happen, they miss, that happens. But they need to communicate that. Sorry, we were supposed to do eucalyptus this week, but their trimming equipment was broken and they can't come back. So they're gonna either do a catch up or they'll come back on the next scheduled time. So easy schedule to do. I believe I've talked to Neri and she's aware that these are deficiencies and she's trying to address them. She's in those 300 emails, but she wants to start. So in your Friday emails, you will start seeing a section on all the key maintenance items that are being taken care of, things that are pending, things that have to be done. You know, the format of the email is going to be very different because she already did that last week when she just went through a whole laundry list of maintenance requests, but the goal is to communicate.
I have a question about the transfer fee or lack of it. I'm hearing from some people that it was voted on months ago, but never implemented. Other people say it's never been discussed. It's been almost a full 10 months of this board running, and we still don't have a community transfer fee for buyers who come in to share in the cost that we had to pay to build the facility there. Badly needed money for maintenance items. And the communication, as people have mentioned, we have no clue if it was ever talked about, is it ever voted on. We're hearing there was a 2-to-1 vote and they didn't implement it. Do you have an opinion about that, or do you know the facts about it?
So I know it was voted because I think it was in the June board meeting, it was voted to
Okay,
include a 7,500 because we're all as members. The next step for that was, once it was voted, was for the board, the property management company to take that action, that motion that was passed, to formulate that and then send it out to the community. That implementation of that transfer fee requires a 2/3 community vote.
no, it does not.
It does.
It doesn't. The board can vote on it without a vote. The board votes on that, not the community.
The board votes on the amount, but the community has to vote on its implementation.
That is only for capital improvements, for where you have to get 2/3 of the homeowners. The board can vote on the transfer fee. In my other GL community, the board voted on it. Same language almost the same language in our documents. But it's been months and we're still not hearing where it is. And there's a lack of communication. I think multiple people talked about that.
Yeah.
We do not hear anything. And if you're on the board and you're the no vote on something, are you willing to come out and say, I voted no and I was on the vote was a 3-2, but I was in a minority, and why?
Yeah, I was. And
Because
actually,
we're not hearing much about why.
so the way and I think it did happen that way, but because I was sitting on a Zoom call where audio sometimes is not the best, I believe the discussion took place and there was a no vote, or there was one individual who said no. But everybody got to hear it. Whoever was physically present was hearing why that. But I believe when we go into the board and we take a substantial issue like that and there's a debate, yes, I may get outvoted on an issue, but you will hear what are my reasoning for the no vote. And I'm willing to go if the rest of the board says, hey, we all have come to an agreement, you're now 4-1, I'm fine with that. And that's something that all of us are prepared for, that there will be times when there will be a 4-1 vote or a 3-2 vote, or it could be the other way around.
But where is that right now? Where is that whole thing? Because, you're hearing all these rumors.
So I want to make sure that I don't misspeak, because what I heard was it may have been called a transfer fee, but it actually was written up as a capital contribution, and therefore it required a 2/3 vote.
Okay, so
but again, I can stop.
we can disagree about that.
Yes, we
So
can.
one of us is right, one of us is wrong. But why after all these months
Yeah.
is the right answer not known?
Right.
Now, you're not a board member yet,
Yeah.
and
We're
we'll
still
hope
gonna
you
treat you
are.
like one.
But, but you're not a board member yet, but what, if there's some dissension going, we don't know what the answer is. Is it require a community vote, which is very expensive and very difficult? You need to get 2/3 of the homeowners to return a ballot, and you need the majority of those.
So here's what happened.
Marion said at the last meeting that it's a matter of ICON needing to send the ballots to the homeowners, because she said it.
But
She
is
said
it-
it does
is it-
require, I don't know. I don't know, that was actually my question, was what requires a community vote
Over
and
$5,000
what can the
in
board
an
just do?
improvement. If you make an improvement over $5,000, for example, say you build another dog park and it costs more than $5,000, that requires a community vote. But I
That's
don't,
the
I
threshold.
think
Anything
the board votes
is
on the
more than
transfer
five?
fee
Yeah.
without our vote.
So first off, I'd say when we don't have the communication, we all make up stories, and that's, we see all of that.
That's the huge
It's been
problem.
on social media and all this stuff, so I agree, I think that is something that, as we move forward, our board needs to do better. I fully
And we
agree.
should know the answer to my question.
Right,
If I'm wrong, then I'm wrong, and if he's right, we should know that. We shouldn't have to be debating,
Correct.
is it require a vote, and why is there no?
So-
Mike, I'm with you, I'm saying the same thing. What I would suggest, because I know Miriam has answered that question, I am not the person to answer it, I don't know. The only thing that I recall is it wasn't a general maintenance fee, it was a capital fee. So
Correct.
I don't know if that makes a difference.
It does.
And I don't know the statute, so, but
Well,
what I'd say is, where I'm going with my thought, is I would address the question directly to Marion and or Dave. I mean, I think they're the ones that know or to ICON. I mean, someone's gotta get the answer out, and maybe it's something that should be in
So there were two
Ryan's
things.
email.
This happened in my previous community in 2023. They were voting on a capital contribution, and surprisingly, the timing was around about the same time, June. GRS told the board, June is a lousy month to do a vote. GRS did not have e-voting capability. GRS completely lacked e-voting. So the only way to get community vote was to send out ballots. And they said the return rate of those ballots will be far below the 2/3 threshold. But the board was so keen on getting it, they sent it out. We got 22%. We never met anywhere near the threshold. 5 votes later, 5 rounds later, we finally got the number passed. So, and it was pretty expensive. Believe me, each round the GRS fee for running ballots is very, very high. So this board, since they knew that GRS was already leaving, probably, and they knew ICON had the capability. They brought ICON in. Hopefully, when ICON settles down, they'll run a ballot, for this.
But shouldn't we know the answer is required?
Yeah, I don't know. I have to see how it was written and what was proposed. I haven't looked at it from that perspective.
I would say it's a question for the lawyers
Would it
that
be
represent
combined?
the HOA. Is it required?
Because I don't know how we could have got it through Riverstone.
Well, we lived in a jail community with same documents, and it took, the board voted it in at a meeting. They did not need a vote of the community. They need a vote of the community to do an
No,
improvement. Yeah.
but I also know that a lot of communities around here, because of the last. Sorry?
I'm just wondering if it was based on the size of the community or the
No,
amount of
800
fee that made it not require a bill versus.
828 homes in the community I was in, same size community.
Comparable, yeah.
Was it 7,500?
It wasn't 7,500, was it?
No, it was a few thousand.
Yeah, I think generally I've heard numbers. In fact, Dave knew there for sure. I know Angela Rizzi, who lived in Stone Creek and was on the board there, she said their community eventually got 2/3 support for a $3,500 fee. Stone Creek is a nearby GL community.
Right next to
Yeah.
Riverstone.
Yeah, and so 3,500, they managed to get that passed. But again, it took a fair amount of education, communication from the board on the benefits of doing that. They actually involved a lot of the realtors in the community to talk to other residents to actually go sell that idea. So I think the task before us is if something needs to go to a 2/3 vote, any item, like you have to create a pitch deck and, talking in terms of how marketing companies do. You have to find a way to appeal to everybody. Someone like you might automatically say, yep, I get it, why needs to be done, I'm ready for it, just tell me when and how much. Somebody might say, I'm not sold on that. And so then you have to figure out what the communication has to be that tailors to everybody so that they all look at the piece of data and says, hey, what's the proposal, what's the recommendation, and what am I signing up for? And that's pretty simple to do. I mean, not simple to do, but it works, but you have to do it.
Maybe they're combining it with a ballot, the HOA ballot vote.
I don't know. I have not been privy to that conversation. I don't know. Maybe they could. I've seen it happen in other places, yes.
What is your feeling on the 7,500? Is it fair, since we've had an array of
As your attorney, I would advise you not to
$700,000, $2
answer
million?
that.
So the 7,500, I don't have, so I don't have the data in front of me that was done, the research done by the board, because Marianne said at one of the conversations that they reached out to other communities around us, and they talked to a whole lot of real estate agents who sell homes here and who bring buyers in. And based on the feedback, they arrived at this number of 7,500. I think Dave Hooker said, based on some of the conversations of properties on Immokalee on either side, the number is a low end 3,500 to a high end of 5,000. So 75 might be on the fringe. We don't know that for a fact. But if it means that I am likely, if we as a community There's also some back-end math to be done. And I say that is, I haven't seen the EPIC report, which tells me what is the capital ask for what we want to do. So when EPIC does a study, they look at all the assets we have and they look at the useful life of each asset and they say, your roof on your clubhouse needs to be replaced in 22 years, and in 22 years, this is the cost. Your pool equipment will be out in 4 years, and this is the cost. They lay out a maintenance schedule, and then they amortize that cost, and they tell you on an annual basis, you need to bring in, I don't know, make a number up, $1.5 million to be able to fund the reserves for in the year in which you need it, right? That's on a regular maintenance schedule. That's the capital.
reserves.
That's the reserves.
Not the capitals.
So, and then there is emergency that he talks about, that God forbid there's a hurricane and things happen. You need another set of funds to be able to ensure that if the roof gets damaged during a hurricane, besides whatever insurance pays, you want to have some money available that you can go fix. For example, landscaping, if all the trees get uprooted and destroyed, insurance doesn't cover trees and landscape. That has to be fixed by you through your association. So you don't want to go to the HOA and say, or the community say, oh God, our landscaping cost for replacing all the trees and everything around is going to be $500,000. So we're going to do a special assessment. That, won't sit well with a lot of people. So you want to build your reserve so you have money in your back pocket to go spend that money, for those kind of events. So there are multiple. There's for the future to do replacement of assets when its useful life is over. There's things to do when you have to replace an asset if there's a breakdown, and then things you have to do, just as it's a break, fix, you need. Some of it is in your maintenance budget, but it's not enough to cover, extraordinary situations.
But the $7,500, doesn't that go in the capital improvement fund? It doesn't go in the reserves.
So I have to say, and I probably need to go look at the language. I don't know which bucket and how it was being allocated. I don't know the answer to that.
Marion said she's going to put everything in one bucket and make it so she can draw from that one bucket to fund various things. At the last meeting I was in with her on Saturday.
So there are pros and cons of that approach. Some communities don't want to give a blanket check to the board to say you can fungibly draw money from buckets. You want to be able to clearly designate for specific, so that it's not, sometimes I know why it's done, because it's for expediency. If I have to go back to the community board because I need to replace some significant damage to the pool and now it's $25,000, in theory, based on if you look at the bylaws, anything over $15,000 requires a community vote. So what does that mean? Do I now go to a 2/3 vote? And it's not that community is going to say no to it. What if I just cannot get all the people to vote in time? Imagine the amount of effort it's going to take to get everybody to say. Because if you don't get the ballot, or you don't see the ballot, you don't see the email, it's not going to happen. We sent out 1488 emails to do access control survey, only 595 came back. It's 42%, it's not 66. What happens if this was a ballot measure? It won't pass. So which is why it's important to give some control to the board, but not all control. And what that fine line is, I don't know. I think it's something to be decided and worked on the item, and those are the kind of critical conversations.
And I'll feel a lot better when all 5 members are making those decisions.
Correct. Correct.
Are you looking for a specific position on the board?
Great question. I think I would, if the other fellow 4 members decide. I'd like to be the president of the board. I'd love to run and become the president. I think my experience allows me to take that role on and be the unifier amongst all the people.
How is that chosen? Like,
By the
is it
board,
the
right?
number of
Number of
votes?
votes, yeah.
The people that.
So the way the bylaws are written right now, the way it's done, though I've seen it done differently in different places. So the way the bylaws says, it says it's once elected, the 5 members sit down and talk amongst themselves and they vote. and they literally will go. A lot of times in many communities that have been, the person with the highest vote is offered the board presidency and he or she refuses it, and then it just goes down. So some of that, it all depends on how it happens. But clearly, depending on it, I would love to be, and I would obviously try to work with the rest of the remaining 4 to convince them that I should be elected the board president, but we'll see. I think.
So right now, there is no clear indication of which way it's going to go. Like I heard Marion say the person who gets the most votes will become the president, and so on and so forth. So if she thinks that way, and if there is another way of going about it, I think we need to resolve it now before the votes are taken.
And that's
rather
funny
than
you say
after
that,
the
because
fact.
with the meeting I was at, Marion explained how the board voted for the president. She didn't want to do it, she didn't want to do it, but they made her become president. So
Yeah, so there is confusion there, and I think that it's important to resolve that before, we get to the point.
So that meeting is held, so soon after the election and the board members are sitting, there's what's called a special meeting. It's labeled as a special meeting. They meet to pick the president, vice president, treasurer, secretary. So that's what they meet. And it's actually facilitated by the association lawyer. A lot of times the association lawyers will come in and say, I know this gets difficult, so here's what other associations do, number of votes. And then they'll say, if the person with the highest vote doesn't want the job, we'll go to the next. I don't know how much, if that actually happened that way, but I'm sure the who got the highest votes in the last round of elections for the board is public record, which what I mean by that is your property managers have that information. And I think it was also posted on Facebook somewhere. But it's information that's available readily, who had the highest votes and who's the next and the next. So I would say, does it need to be resolved? I think that definitely needs to be a conversation with the attorney. I think there are some proposals that the person supervising the elections, almost all the communities that I've seen or heard in Florida, there's a special election officer appointed. ICON brings, the property manager brings someone who has the special skill. It's not your association attorney. They should not actually oversee because they are acting on the basis of, to be fair and independent, they're not associated with the attorney office. They're not associated with ICON. It's an independent company who comes in and oversees the election. So hopefully they supervise the receipt of the ballots, they validate all the e-votes, because this time you're going to be voting by electronic voting, largely by electronic voting. There will be ballots for those who don't opt for electronic voting. But other than that, it'll be, the goal will be electronic, yes.
What is your opinion on the savings that were supposedly had over the past 10 months? How much of it was reduction in like the landscaping or I'm concerned about Gather in particular, if you're, pulling out money to make savings or to put money in your reserves, how is that going to impact what we do with Gather?
So I was fortunate enough to attend a meeting where Troy Finance Committee outlined the savings or the projected savings that was right up to July. And he said bulk of the savings were from what we call staffing, positions not being filled. So you had Lori Nixon leave, and there was 6 weeks before Michelle came on board. Then Michelle left on July 29th. She was not backfilled until ICON started on September 1st.
So is that something that the board should have been proud of? Look what we saved.
No, I'm not.
I'm just saying that.
No, but I think nevertheless, it is at the end of the day, from what was in your budget, there's a surplus. So I don't want to take away the fact that it is a surplus, but how it got there, You know, some of it is hard negotiations, in some areas, and some of it is, you know, money saved because of the staffing changes. Bulk of it is staffing. Some of it is to do with changing some of the schedules with down to earth. That's a second substantial chunk. And then there's a whole bunch of money lying around that was, you know, budgeted for and not actually spent. For example, I think there was a chunk of money put in, but at the same time, the board also had not enough money because we had to hire Epic to do the reserves, the engineering study. So they had to fund that. So at some point in the whole process, I want to see the whole year play out, because the problem with looking at, you know, HOAs don't do accrual-based accounting, they do cash-based. They look at what I spent up to a point in time. They don't look at what is expected to be spent, which is based on accruals. So they don't amortize the whole year cost. So it's a little funny. So unless we see the whole year budget, which will actually happen because now the auditors are going to be here at the end of the month and early November to look through our HOA budgets, that will be a good time to take a benchmark and say, what is actually the savings, you know?
But
So-
should they be running their campaign on, we saved all this money kind of deal? I mean,
Depends how gullible we are.
So, do you know?
I think it's important to everyone here, if you sense that that doesn't sit right with you, I think those are questions you have to ask. You know, we all owe it to ourselves to ask each candidate questions and challenge them, you know?
So do you know the changes made to the landscaping contract?
What I heard, there weren't any changes.
See, that's it, you heard, we didn't see it in writing.
From Marion, they just took money out.
What did they take out? They had to take something
But
out.
have you
how
seen
much
the
they paid.
landscaping at each corner? Right now it is.
They didn't do any line items, they just took 400,000 out.
Well, it's coming from somewhere.
She
And-
said it was,
It wasn't a line item thing.
it was, by comparison to other communities, it was too expensive. And she just
They were charging
negotiated
us
it
too
down.
much, she negotiated
But
down.
the services have deteriorated.
Same exact line items.
She
are in
claims it's
both
the same
contracts.
exact line.
Yeah, she did, she
She
said that.
does consistently say it was not a reduction of services.
Well, for example, on the end of
Whether
the
that's
streets, they
I'm just telling you what
replaced
she
the
said.
flowers with perennials. At the end of all the streets, if you go down Majestic, they've dug up the flower beds,
Made them small.
made them small by adding grass around the perimeter, and put perennials in, which don't need to be replaced 2 to 3 times a year.
But then they don't look very good.
So we don't seem to understand.
So let me answer this question a little different, because I think for me this is an important, because we, in the corporate world, we push ourselves to negotiate hard with, just as our customers negotiate hard to pay lower fees, service fees, etc. We do the same with our partners, suppliers, etc. And often the goal is to get same, if not better service for a lower amount of money. However, in a company, we actually put in the contracts what are called service level agreements. If you read the down to earth agreement, you will see the service level agreement specifies the number of times I've come to do mowing, trimming, all that stuff. But it doesn't specify any other parameter of metric to be able to say, you did a good job. So example, the only way to do that is you have to have a staff who drives around and says, on Jacaranda, the grass is not trimmed correctly, and takes pictures and sends it back. Then open tickets on G. Now, I've heard this, I mean, it's actually happened to me a couple of times. I open a ticket with Down to Earth. I see no one come to my house and they close it. Because they have an SLA that says you have to close the ticket within 48 hours. But they close it. And then the guy calls you and says, I closed it, but I'll get the work done. It's on my radar of my team. But when?
Trust me.
Trust me, I'll get it done. So to me, it's a little, as a homeowner, because I opened a ticket for them to come and fix something on my property, I'm watching it. But when you have to, if you're the board and it's a large community, you want your property manager or your maintenance man to be looking around and tracking it. So So you have a contract, you have great language, you negotiate great prices, but if you don't have an enforcement mechanism,
Don't we also have a landscaping committee?
we did have
They
that.
did, they quit.
Oh,
Well, I have heard two different, I don't know, sorry, I apologize. There was a committee that existed, I don't know what happened, whether they met. You know, I don't know, Dave, do you know?
no, that's why I asked the question.
Okay.
So you've said the bulk of the savings, as far as you know, have come from the reduction of staff in between filling the position 6 weeks, 8 weeks.
Right.
So things could theoretically be slipping by. Landscaping issues might not be seen. This is no property manager. The condition of the clubhouse bathrooms, the rug in the social room, that could all slip by because there's been no property manager. Would you agree with that?
Yeah,
Okay.
I would agree.
You
I
got,
mean, anytime you understaff, you're
Yeah.
setting yourself to fail.
Absolutely.
I think for a size of this community, I would want to see, right or wrong, I don't know, I think Icon is staffing up more than what GRS had here. So we had Bryce, we had Kerry, we had Francis, and Lori, 4 people, right?
We used to have a facilities manager.
And we had a facility who quit, and then now somebody else is taking
Yes.
his job. They have added a couple of extra roles. So there's a dedicated receptionist, as they call it, which is the old Bryce job. But Bryce was playing multiple roles. He was sitting at the desk, he was logging tickets, he was handling tickets. So those 2 neat things, right? But they have an administrative assistant, Judy Woods, who's dedicated to tracking all your emails and answering. And Neri is going to focus on the strategic items that we want the community to have. And then she's got a couple of other people. So Icon is setting themselves up to do well, but I think they need to be helped and managed, and then so they can be successful. So, you know.
I just thought of, does anyone remember what the last election turned out to be? I think Peter was number 1, the highest number of votes. Dave was number 2, and Marion was number 3. So in that case, the highest vote getter did not become president.
Because she said they wanted her to be president. She stated that, and she kept saying, no, you got the most votes. And they're like, no, we want you to, that's what happened. So the 2 of them voted her as president.
Just because
That's
someone
true.
gets the most votes, that's sometimes gonna be a popularity contest
Yeah.
and not necessarily the
The best.
best
Yeah.
leader
Yeah.
of that group.
Best qualified.
That's absolutely true. Which is why the process has to be vetted itself. You know, so, you know, the last one being any example, if the numbers were exactly as he said, where Peter got the most votes, but he chose not to be the board president, he didn't want to be, he didn't think he had the skill sets to be doing that role. And it was more in Marion's wheelhouse than
You know,
his.
honestly, to me, I would think a 5-member board, if they get together and they're all on the same page, they feel comfortable in voting who should be president. I would think. I don't care who
Yeah.
this is. Yeah.
The only thing about who gets the most votes, the top 3 vote getters are 2-year terms, and the next 2 are 1 year. So that's the only thing I understand
That's
about
right.
the
That
number
is
of votes.
right. That is correct.
I have a question. Sorry, I have a question too. No, it's not to do with your time. You can talk as long as you want. But my question is, this selection, after the election is over and you've counted the votes and now the selection has to be done, is it done in a closed conference room or is it done with everybody there?
It's supposed to be an open forum.
Okay, so we all will be there.
Yeah, you'll be in the social hall,
Yeah.
and it'll be
Okay,
on
that's
video.
good.
everything.
That feels good.
It's just like a regular board.
Right,
It's
right.
It's gotta be a happy hour, right?
I'm sorry, we're gonna have to leave.
So thank you.
Nothing to do with what you said,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Thank
coming.
you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
I hope I answered your questions.
No, you-
Thank you.
Thank you.
But yeah, I think it's it's not a popularity contest, but at the same time, unlike the last election cycle where the amount of time between when GL said we were withdrawing to when the election took place was very short, this time you guys have a lot of time to vet candidates. I think a lot of you are doing that job, which I think is really helpful. So in some ways, the number of votes is not based on popularity, but it's also a endorsement of what you see in that particular candidate. So it kind of brings together, so to some degree, you want to coalesce that thought process when you go into that group of 5 meeting and come to a consensus. So,
Just a real quick, last, oh, maybe this will be the last. But in the landscaping part of it, the board handles the approvals of any landscaping done on a personal property. Which to me, there's a time limit, before a homeowner can have a procedure done on their property. Number 2 is they have to come up with, the $1,000 deposit to, with a $50 fee for doing that. My claim would be that you hire a contracting company who is the best authority of what should be done on an individual's property, and shouldn't be left up to a board to make that decision. My concern would be that decision should be put on to the management of the landscaping company to say yay, nay, or whatever, without having the board to go through that particular.
so you're referring to the architectural committee. That's the
Yes.
ACC is the body that is in our bylaws that is set up to review any changes that are external to the house, that are visible to all of us.
Right.
So they can ensure that your changes not only abides by the rules and regulations, but also abides by what are the architectural standards that have been covered. I believe Paul, Don, and I'm forgetting her name, Mary. The 3 of them do an amazing job. They're actually extremely well versed with all the nuances of our architectural standards that our community needs. They've actually gone through that, and it's one of those 2. There are 2 committees that are written in and are protected, just like the board is. ACC is one, and then Sections Review Committee is the other. Those 2 committees, they have very specific jobs. The architecture committee reviews. They look at the standards that have been set forth, and they make sure that all the setbacks, guidelines. They don't necessarily get into, they also get into things like drainage. If you are encroaching onto a swale, they will tell you no. And if you're not, that's fine.
But shouldn't that be, you have a set of rules and a guideline of what the overall association wants as a property, but put that over to the, they know, the project manager or property manager of each individual property should know those rules. So he's gonna make you can't do this because it encroaches on an easement or encroaches on drainage. Let them make the decision.
I think the Florida statute is very clear that the architectural committee has to be a group of residents of the community. They can seek expertise from another entity. They can say, XYZ landscaping company can come and give us inputs to changes. Usually, I believe all architectural committees do really well with the review of the application and the approval of the application. Where they usually have a little bit of challenge because of the way the work gets done is in the sign off of the work after it's done. Because once the work is done, say especially landscaping, it's very hard unless you know whether, for example, you adhere to the drainage requirements for your lot, and that your drainage isn't going to go into your neighbor's lot and thereby create a waterlogging issue. That is usually where there's a neighbors butt heads and there are challenges, and then those go to the board, then there's a fine, and then it goes to the sanction committee to say, now adjudicate this issue for us. So those are the kind of things you have to be sensitive to. But the statute is very clear that it cannot be the property manager, it cannot be the board, but it has to be a group of residents who take on that role. Okay. Great. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.